Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that some of the very items sitting in your kitchen right now are not just clutter, they are silent invitations to chaos, stagnation, and spiritual heaviness in your life? What if the reason you feel drained, blocked, or unsettled in your own home has nothing to do with luck and everything to do with what you've tolerated on your shelves, in your drawers, and on your counters? Tonight, you're about to discover why certain kitchen items must be removed immediately, because what you allow in your environment will eventually manifest in your life. There are environments that invite peace, and there are environments that entertain chaos. Every space you occupy speaks, even when no words are present. Your kitchen, the place where nourishment is prepared, where life is sustained, where families gather in trust, is not just a physical location, it is a spiritual atmosphere. What you allow to remain there does not remain neutral. Objects carry meaning. Objects carry history. Objects carry influence. And when you understand this, you begin to recognize that disorder in your environment often mirrors disorder in your life. You must never underestimate the power of what you tolerate. There are items people keep not because they serve purpose, but because they serve habit, fear, sentiment, or ignorance. And when purpose is absent, dysfunction finds residence. Anything that occupies space without purpose becomes a legal tenant of decay. That is a principle of life. Nature itself rejects what has no function. When water stops flowing, it breeds disease. When air stops moving, it suffocates life. When objects without purpose remain in your kitchen, they create an atmosphere that does not cultivate life, it suppresses it. The first thing you must examine is anything broken that you have refused to release. Broken plates, cracked cups, chipped bowls, items damaged yet still in use. You call it thrift. You call it management. But what you are really doing is normalizing brokenness. Every time you eat from what is cracked, you are subconsciously accepting fracture as sufficient. You are training your mind to tolerate what is damaged. Spirits of lack thrive in tolerated brokenness because you have signaled that wholeness is not required in your domain. The second is expired food and decaying substances. Anything rotting in your refrigerator or cabinets is a symbol of neglected responsibility. Rot attracts what feeds on decay. Just as flies gather where there is spoilage, destructive spiritual influences gather where negligence is permitted. When nourishment becomes poison through neglect, it reflects a mind that has postponed discipline. Discipline protects atmospheres. When discipline leaves, deterioration enters. The third is tools you never clean. Grease-covered stoves, moldy sponges, bacteria-infested cutting boards. These are not merely hygiene concerns. They are spiritual metaphors made visible. Cleanliness is an expression of order, and order is the language of dominion. When you lose dominion over maintenance, you open psychological and spiritual doors to confusion. A person who cannot command their environment will struggle to command their destiny. The fourth is objects connected to dark symbolism. Items decorated with violent imagery, death motifs, or oppressive iconography. You may call it art, you may call it culture, but symbolism communicates to the subconscious long before logic interprets it. Your mind absorbs what your eyes repeatedly see. If your kitchen, the birthplace of nourishment, is decorated with symbols of death, fear, or torment, you are creating atmospheric contradiction. You cannot cultivate life where death is visually celebrated. The fifth is hoarded clutter, drawers filled with useless utensils, expired gadgets, duplicates you never use. Clutter is delayed decision-making. It is postponed authority. It signals an inability to release what no longer serves purpose. Where clutter dominates, clarity suffocates. Even your thoughts become crowded when your spaces are congested. You will notice that creative ideas struggle to breathe in chaotic environments because mental order feeds on physical order. The sixth is containers that once held harmful substances now repurposed for food. Bottles that stored chemicals now holding oil. Jars that held toxins now storing spices. You may wash them, but the symbolism remains. Nourishment placed in vessels of former poison. This reflects a deeper psychological pattern. Trying to carry new life in old frameworks, Transformation requires new containers. You cannot pour purity into vessels associated with contamination and expect your mind to ignore the contradiction. The seventh is anything kept out of fear rather than function. Charms, ritual objects, or superstitious items placed in kitchens for protection or for luck. When you depend on objects for spiritual security, you surrender your authority to lifeless matter. Fear invites the very oppression it hopes to prevent. True dominion does not come from objects. It comes from alignment, discipline, and spiritual awareness. When fear decorates your environment, intimidation occupies your atmosphere. You must understand that spirits, whether you define them psychologically, emotionally, or metaphysically, are attracted to agreement. They thrive where they are permitted. Permission is not always verbal, it is environmental. What you keep is what you permit. What you permit is what you empower. Your kitchen is a training ground for governance. If you cannot govern what feeds your body, you will struggle to govern what feeds your mind. Leadership begins in private spaces, long before it manifests in public arenas. The condition of your kitchen often prophesies the condition of your life. Order in small spaces cultivates authority in large territories. When you remove what is broken, you make room for what is whole. When you discard decay, you invite freshness. When you cleanse contamination, you restore purity. When you eliminate dark symbolism, you elevate psychological light. When you release clutter, you liberate mental clarity. When you replace toxic sea vessels, you honor transformation. When you reject fear-based objects, you reclaim authority. Atmospheres shift when decisions are made. Many people pray for peace while living in environments that manufacture unrest. They ask for clarity while dwelling in congestion. They seek elevation while surrounded by deterioration. But elevation is not attracted to neglect. It is attracted to preparation. You prepare for the life you desire by structuring the spaces you control. Your dominion is expressed through what you allow to remain. Every item in your kitchen should answer one question. Does this serve life? If it does not serve life, it is negotiating with decay. If it does not advance nourishment, it is entertaining deterioration. Life thrives where intentionality governs placement. You were never designed to coexist with dysfunction. You were designed to cultivate, to steward, to command environments until they reflect order. And order is not perfection. It is alignment. It is the conscious decision that everything within your territory must agree with the future you intend to build. When you walk into your kitchen, you should feel clarity, not heaviness. You should sense readiness, not resistance. You should experience nourishment, not neglect, because the spaces that feed your body must never become spaces that starve your spirit. Remove what is broken, remove what is decaying, remove what is unclean, remove what symbolizes darkness, remove what breeds confusion, remove what carries contamination, remove what is rooted in fear, remove what is rooted in fear. And when you begin that process, you will discover that you are not merely cleaning a room, you are confronting agreements you made unconsciously, because every object you tolerated without question was once a decision you postponed, and postponed decisions accumulate weight. They press on your mind quietly. They drain your sense of authority subtly, until one day you feel overwhelmed, not knowing that the overwhelm was manufactured by small permissions granted over time. Authority is exercised in removal as much as in acquisition. Many people celebrate what they add to their lives but rarely recognize the power of what they eliminate. Yet creation itself functions this way. Before anything new emerges, separation occurs. Light was separated from darkness, land was separated from water, order was established by division, by removing what did not belong together. So when you remove items from your kitchen that contradict life, you are participating in the same principle, establishing order through separation. You must become comfortable with release, because some people hold on to items not out of usefulness but out of emotional attachment. A cracked dish from years ago, a burnt pot tied to memories, containers saved just in case. But you must ask yourself, is memory being honored or is dysfunction being preserved? Must always outrank sentiment, when sentiment sustains disorder. You can honor the past without allowing it to occupy functional space in your present. Your environment must reflect where you are going, not where you have been. There is also a discipline in immediacy. When something expires, dispose of it immediately. When something breaks, address it immediately. Delay is the breeding ground of accumulation. Accumulation without review becomes burden, and burden, when left unmanaged, transforms into silent oppression. You begin to feel resistance in spaces that were meant to empower you. This is why highly effective individuals maintain structured environments. It is not obsession, it is alignment. They understand that physical disorder leaks into decision-making, emotional regulation, and spiritual sensitivity. When your external world is congested, your internal processing slows. You hesitate more, you doubt more, you procrastinate more, because chaos fragments focus. Your kitchen should sharpen your readiness, not dull it. Every morning you enter that space, you should feel empowered to produce nourishment, to create, to serve. But empowerment thrives in clarity. Imagine attempting to prepare a meal while searching endlessly for clean utensils, navigating cluttered counters, or discarding expired ingredients first. Your energy is spent on correction instead of creation. This is how many people live their lives, constantly correcting preventable disorder instead of advancing purposeful production. When you remove misaligned items, you reclaim productive energy. Finite in expression, even if infinite in source. Where you direct it determines what manifests. If your energy is spent managing decay, you will have little left to cultivate growth. But when decay is eliminated, energy is freed for creativity, strategy, and expansion. There is also a principle of respect involved. How you treat the space that feeds you reflects how you value your own life. Neglect in the kitchen often mirrors neglect in self-care, decision-making, and long-term planning. But when you elevate the condition of that space, you send a psychological signal. My life is worth order. My nourishment is worth excellence. My environment must agree with my value. And value awareness transforms behavior. You begin to purchase more intentionally. You store more carefully. You maintain more consistently. Because once your mind aligns with order, disorder becomes uncomfortable. What you once tolerated easily now feels intrusive. That discomfort is growth. It is evidence that your internal standards have risen. Standards protect atmospheres. Without standards, anything enters and everything remains. But when standards are established, entry requires qualification. Even objects must justify their presence. Ask yourself continually, does this item contribute to life, efficiency, and clarity? Or does it consume space, energy, and focus? You are not being extreme. You are being intentional. Intentionality is the foundation of dominion. You were never designed to live reactively, constantly adjusting to environments you refuse to manage. You were designed to shape atmospheres so they support your purpose. Your kitchen is one of the most powerful training arenas for this mindset because it deals directly with sustenance, the daily reinforcement of life itself. When that arena is governed well, it builds confidence that spills into other territories, your workspaces, your relationships, your finances, your time management. Because governance is transferable. If you can identify what does not belong in your kitchen, you sharpen your ability to identify what does not belong in your schedule. If you can remove expired food, you become more willing to release expired relationships. If you can discard broken tools, you become more courageous in abandoning broken habits. Physical action trains psychological courage. Many people seek spiritual elevation while avoiding practical discipline. But elevation is holistic. It manifests through daily decisions, environmental stewardship, and consistent maintenance. Spiritual awareness without environmental alignment creates contradiction. You cannot ask for higher sensitivity while living in sustained disorder. Sensitivity increases in ordered atmospheres. You think more clearly. You decide more confidently. You feel more stable because nothing in your immediate environment is silently draining you. Everything is aligned, supportive, purposeful. Even the act of cleaning becomes transformative when understood correctly. It is no longer a chore, it is an assertion of authority. Every wiped surface declares that neglect has no residence here. Every discarded item announces that dysfunction has been evicted. Every organized shelf proclaims that clarity governs this territory, and atmospheres respond to governance. Peace becomes easier to access. Focus becomes easier to maintain. Creativity becomes easier to express. Because resistance has been reduced at the environmental level, never underestimate how many delays in life are sustained by mismanaged spaces. People think they lack motivation when in reality they lack alignment. They think they need inspiration when what they need is environmental correction. Inspiration flows more naturally in atmospheres that are structured to receive it. So when you stand in your kitchen after removal, cleansing, and reordering, you are witnessing more than cleanliness. You are witnessing agreement. Agreement between your environment and your intention. Agreement between your standards and your space. Agreement between the life you desire and the territory you control. And agreement amplifies power, because wherever there is agreement, energy flows without obstruction. Productivity increases, discipline stabilizes, vision sharpens. You become more decisive because nothing around you is negotiating against your progress. This is why you must remain vigilant. Disorder will always attempt to return subtly. One neglected item, one postponed cleaning, one tolerated clutter pile. But vigilance preserves alignment. Maintenance sustains authority. Governance is not a one-time event. It is a lifestyle. Every day you reinforce what is permitted and what is rejected. Every day you declare through action what kind of atmosphere you authorize around your life. And as you continue removing what contradicts life, clarity, and dominion, you strengthen your capacity to recognize misalignment instantly, not only in objects, but in opportunities, influences, and decisions that attempt to enter your territory. Because once your awareness sharpens, you begin to realize that environments are gateways. They either filter what enters your life, or they permit intrusion without resistance. A governed kitchen trains you to become a governed individual, one who does not allow anything to cross the borders of their life without evaluation. Evaluation is the guardian of destiny. You must evaluate what feeds you, what surrounds you, what influences your atmosphere daily. Because influence is not always loud. Often it is subtle, quiet, repetitive. It is the cracked plate you ignore every morning, the expired jar pushed to the back, the unclean surface you promise to address tomorrow. These small tolerances accumulate into a culture of allowance. And culture, once established, governs behavior automatically. If the culture of your environment is neglect, your actions will follow neglect. If the culture is order, your actions will align with order. So you are not merely removing items, you are reprogramming culture. Culture is built through repetition. Each time you clean immediately, you reinforce urgency. Each time you discard decay, you reinforce discernment. Each time you organize tools, you reinforce preparedness. Over time, these actions no longer require effort, they become instinct. You begin to reject disorder without deliberation because your internal culture no longer negotiates with it. And this internal culture extends beyond the kitchen walls. It begins to shape how you speak, how you plan, how you invest time, how you manage relationships. Because once you experience the psychological liberation that comes from environmental alignment, you become unwilling to live beneath that standard in any area of life. Liberation is addictive when experienced through order. You realize how much energy was previously trapped in disorganization, how much time was consumed searching for misplaced tools, how much focus was drained by visual congestion. And once that energy is released, you redirect it toward creation, development, and vision execution. Vision requires environmental cooperation. No architect builds on unstable ground. No leader advances while surrounded by unmanaged chaos. No visionary sustains clarity while living in visual contradiction. Your physical spaces must agree with your mental blueprints. When they do not, progress slows, because your environment is resisting what your mind is attempting to construct. Agreement accelerates manifestation. When your kitchen reflects nourishment, cleanliness, readiness, and order, it reinforces the identity you are building, a disciplined steward of life. Identity is strengthened by consistent visual confirmation. You see order, you feel order, you behave in order. This is why removal must be thorough, not partial. Partial removal leaves fragments of contradiction. It is like attempting to purify water while leaving contaminants at the bottom. Eventually they rise again. Thoroughness protects transformation. When you cleanse, cleanse completely. When you remove, remove decisively. Do not negotiate with items that clearly violate purpose. Decisiveness strengthens authority. Indecision weakens environments. It delays necessary action. It sustains misalignment longer than required. But decisive individuals maintain atmospheres that move at the speed of CLA. RITI. When something no longer serves life, it is released without prolonged debate, because purpose does not beg for space, it claims it. And when your kitchen becomes a space fully claimed by purpose, you will notice subtle yet powerful shifts. Preparation becomes joyful rather than burdensome. Cooking becomes creative rather than stressful. Gathering becomes warm rather than tense, because the atmosphere now supports the activity rather than resisting it. Atmosphere shapes experience. Two people can perform the same task in different environments and experience completely different emotional outcomes. One feels drained, the other energized. One feels constrained, the other expansive. The difference is not the task, it is the atmosphere surrounding the task. So when you govern your kitchen, you are governing the emotional tone attached to nourishment itself. Food prepared in clarity carries a different psychological weight than food prepared in chaos. Even your posture changes, your breathing shifts, your patience increases, because your nervous system responds to environmental signals constantly. Order communicates safety, cleanliness communicates readiness, structure communicates control, and when your mind perceives control, it relaxes enough to operate at higher levels of creativity and precision. This is why disciplined environments often produce disciplined thinking, because the brain mirrors what it repeatedly encounters. Visual order trains cognitive order. Spatial clarity trains strategic clarity. You begin to think in organized sequences. You plan more effectively. You execute more efficiently. All because your daily environments have trained you, our mind, to function without congestion. Never dismiss the psychological training embedded in physical stewardship. Even the way items are arranged carries influence. Accessibility reflects priority. Visibility reflects importance. When life-giving tools are easy to reach and harmful or unnecessary items are absent, you create behavioral momentum toward productivity. Momentum is powerful. It reduces friction between intention and action. You do not hesitate to cook healthy meals when your kitchen supports the process. You do not delay preparation when tools are clean and available. The environment removes excuses before they form, and excuse elimination accelerates growth, because many limitations people attribute to motivation are actually structural inefficiencies. They do not lack desire, they lack supportive environments. Once the environment aligns, action becomes smoother, faster, more consistent. Consistency builds confidence. Confidence builds expansion. Expansion requires sustained order to manage its growth. So your kitchen becomes symbolic training for managing increase. If you cannot maintain order with what you currently possess, expansion would only magnify disorder. Discipline at small scale prepares you for stewardship at large scale. This is why removal remains ongoing. As your life grows, new items enter, new tools, new appliances, new containers. But growth must never compromise alignment. Each addition must be evaluated with the same question: Does this serve life, clarity, and purpose within this territory? If not, it does not qualify for residence. Qualification preserves harmony. Harmony sustains peace. Peace enhances perception. And perception sharpens wisdom. So the governed kitchen evolves into more than a functional space. It becomes a living reflection of internal leadership. Anyone who enters senses intentionality immediately. They feel the difference without needing explanation. Because atmospheres communicate faster than words. And you, standing within that governed environment, feel reinforced daily. Reinforced in discipline. Reinforced in authority. Reinforced in clarity. As every object around you continues to agree with the standard you have established and the life you are deliberately constructing through conscious removal, structured placement, and sustained environmental dominion.